What's up everybody, Dende here. Today's video is about AEW Fight Forever, if you couldn't tell. All Elite Wrestling is a professional wrestling company that started in the year 2019, owned by Tony Khan, and it's known as the second largest professional wrestling company in the United States to this day, right behind WWE. And within 3 years, it's accomplished so much in the world of professional wrestling that it's absolutely, just crazy to think about. Which is why today we're taking a look at their first ever video game, and today I'm going to be giving it, my personal thoughts and opinions on everything that I've seen so far about AEW Fight Forever. I'm going to be looking at some of the pros, some of the cons, some of the things that I feel like are somewhat in the middle, and just giving them out here today in today's video. So let's take a look. Now, originally when this game was first showed off, it kind of looked like this. In my whole honest opinion, I didn't really hate the art style, but I saw a lot of people just, not necessarily liking the, over-exaggerated body proportions, which I can completely understand, and I'm personally not 100% a fan of the fact that, Kenny has this really weird, buff-looking, body type, but, it was a game, and it was just footage in its early stages, so I can't really say that it's, like, the worst thing in the world, but this was back when, Fight Forever didn't really have its own, video game title, so I can completely understand where people, have their own thoughts and opinions. But now, let's get into the actual nitty-gritty. Looking at the true gameplay, looking at everything that we've seen, and, giving our thoughts and opinions on, everything about, the true gameplay. So let's jump into that really quickly. So the first video we're going to end up taking a look at is Kenny Omega versus Adam Cole, and I'm going to be giving my full opinions and thoughts on this just each and every second that, analyzing and looking at things and just giving my thoughts and opinions on this specifically. First thing that we see are the entrances, which I have to say, even though they are very short, it does give off that sort of, No Mercy vibe, which I know that's exactly, what, Fight Forever is trying to go for. And to me, in terms of the entrances already, it kind of already succeeded, because No Mercy's entrances weren't that long, and, I understand that people, were totally, completely against it. Next up, we have a quick tutorial where William Regal basically runs down the, basics of things you need to know about the game, how to punch, how to strike, how to do grapples and all that kind of stuff, and how to perform moves, which is common wrestling stuff, which is completely fine to understand. Up next, we get to take a look at some of the controls, and one of the things that we get to find that's actually 100% interesting is finishers, how finishers and signatures are done in the game. There is instead, not just 1 or 2 finishers that you can choose and select. You actually have a total of 5 slots, which in my opinion, absolutely, different, absolute game changer in my opinion, and, that's just my opinion, and I don't know what people think about that. I think that that's a good thing, so that's good in my opinion. But really quick, I want to touch up on these controls because I am not sure if I am a fan of how this control layout is done. Pressing B to run, right trigger to Irish whip, left trigger to exit the ring. My guess is that Ukes and AEW wanted to, do a not necessarily a, control scheme somewhat similar to how, the WWE games have done it for years, but more of because once again, this is them trying to do their version of, No Mercy. I guess they wanted to try to go for a control scheme that was more if an Aki wrestling game was developed in this current generation, which I'm not against, but I don't know how to feel about this, honestly. But maybe, just looking at it, it probably isn't going to be, something that's the end of the world, but, that's something that I kind of want to remain cautious on those kinds of things. So let's take a look at the rest. Now, looking at the gameplay, the striking in combat looks very, it looks very smooth in my opinion. I have to be completely honest. I like that the momentum bars are very similar to how, the Aki wrestling games had with their, spirit meters, and, that's kind of interesting to me. So, No Mercy was my first wrestling game as a child growing up, and it's not an easy game to master, so that's something. I do like how the pickup animations look when Adam Cole just smacks Kenny and then just decides to pull him by his hair. To me, I think that's good. I noticed that every time that you taunt, you get a specific buff, which is kind of interesting. I'm not necessarily against it. I think it would be, something that's somewhat of a game changer. That's kind kind of cool. One interesting thing that I did realize is that, certain taunts have like actual audio that plays, which in my opinion is something that, we kind of are already kind of used to that with like, the WWE games, but like, it feels like already every taunt has some sort of like, or every taunt and every gesture has, some sort of audio connected to it, which is actually pretty cool. You can't hear it in like this specific recording, but like that's, one, because I kind of forgot to, set the audio because I didn't want to, be talking over, people that are already talking in terms of gameplay. Okay, here's one thing that I did not like in the gameplay already is the springboards that happen. They kind of have that magnetic feel that you would see in like the 360 era kind of WWE video games where like you do the springboard, and rather than like accidentally going a little bit over and like somehow missing, it would be like he's close enough so the move still connects. In my opinion, that's kind of a it's kind of an but like I get what we're trying to. It's not something that like it kind of sounds like I'm nitpicking, but it's like it's one of those things where it's just like I wish I feel like they'll clean that up like before release, so that's fine in my opinion. It is what it is. I will say one thing though, these move animations look fucking amazing still. I genuinely can't. Even though some of the moves like like strikes and stuff like that are kind of from like the older WWE games, but it's just the the power bomb into like the V trigger looks so amazing in my opinion. This game really tries to go for that Aki wrestling game feel, and going from the taunt button into like immediately getting your finisher and like signature, it feels really good to see in my opinion. I did see that like Adam Cole did a repetitive move, and the game will actually tell you that your move is like stale, that you keep repeating the same move. So I'm guessing based on that alone, you probably won't like regain like your momentum because you keep doing the same shit instead of doing something a tad bit different, which in my opinion definitely does something in terms of trying to make you the player try to do something more different when playing the match. It helps with the match flow in my opinion, so like that's kind of cool. I will say I do like this brainbuster like knee drop that Adam Cole does, and the fact that he does like a little wake up taunt into the boom to like sit Kenny up and try to go for the pin. It looks smooth in my opinion. I love it. Okay, I will say one thing that I already don't like is the, having to mash buttons in order to, like, kick out of moves and stuff like that. Like, I'm not a fan of, like, the kick out minigame that was in, like, the previous WWE games. Like, that's, like, it is what it is, but, like, I think 2K22 did kind of a good job in terms of like how the kick out minigame works, because all you gotta do is just tap one button instead of trying to tap like multiple. Like I don't know, it feels like that's the one thing that kind of is like something that I can't really vibe with in my opinion. Another thing that I kind of just noticed is that sometimes certain moves don't really connect a lot of the time. Like some of them are like diving attacks, and like some of them will sometimes be strikes, and to me that's kind of like a no. And I feel like, it once again, kind of like nitpicky stuff, it's not necessarily too, there. I will say this one wing angel from the top, like from the corner, absolutely fantastic it looked like in my opinion. So yeah, there's that. Another thing that I do like is that we do get like, win-loss records in the game. It's kind of like similar to how like, the UFC games would do it. And to me, I feel like that's an awesome thing. It's a little, unique touch that like adds to the AEW Fight Forever experience, and to me, I feel like that's a good thing. So yeah, I'm kind of impressed with the already on-screen, presentation and demo that, we've seen from, AEW Games YouTube channel already by default. Now, I kind of want to take a look over at some off-screen footage, which, it's not really their fault, but, it kind of is one of those things to talk about. So we're gonna take a look at this for a second, but before I do, I have to give credit where credit is due. Shout outs to the Game Club, who actually got Tokyo Game Show footage for AEW Fight Forever. They knew that this was a game that didn't really get that much coverage, and we don't really get that much information about the game already, and we don't really get to see actual full gameplay, and gameplay is just really rare to see about the game. Even though this footage is off screen, it still helps that people were able to cover it. So if you haven't already, and they already said in their video that they're not covering the game, so I'm just letting you know this right now. But they are covering multiple games. I'll even show some of the games that they're covering. There's a list right here. But yeah, if you could, please do me a favor, check out their YouTube channel. Their link is in the description. And if you're interested in some of the games that they're going to be talking about, then please give them a like, give them a follow, give them a hit the subscribe button for them, give them a like on their Fight Forever video, and yeah, that's all I can really say about that. I have to emphasize that this gameplay is CPU versus CPU gameplay, so we're not really going to see one of them actually, or one of the people behind the show actually playing. But we do get to see, the likes of characters like, CM Punk. Of course, we're going to see Kenny Omega again. The Big Show, not the Big Show, but Paul White, Adam Cole, Hikaru Shida, and Thunder Rosa. So the first match we're going to look at is CM Punk versus Kenny Omega. And what I can say right now is that I do like the fact that they have a little grounded guard animation, which to me is absolutely pretty cool. I can confirm for people who are actually curious but haven't looked at anything in relation to, AEW Fight Forever, CM Punk does in fact have his, cult of personality theme in the game, along with Kenny Omega having his, battle cry theme, which, by the way, absolute banger of a theme song, if in my personal opinion. It's fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, go on Spotify, look it up right now. I do like the strong Irish whip animation, I have to completely say. When they toss their opponents outside of the ring, it's more of it's very different, it feels different. I've seen a lot of people have, this debate about CM Punk's, GTS animation in the game already. I personally think it looks fine. I don't really see a big problem with it in my opinion, but I think it looks okay. Here's one thing that I absolutely have to say that I am absolutely in love with the game already. There's a bell ring anytime someone gets hit with a low blow. That to me just screams just WWF No Mercy 2, and to me that's awesome. And just so you think that I'm not making it up, there it is. Here's a small detail that I just noticed that I didn't notice until now. You can actually taunt and still prepare for whatever move may come next. I know that was a feature that was in the PS2 era WWE games, I think not No Mercy, but games Just Bring It, Shut Your Mouth, Here Comes the Pain, all those games kind of had that similar animation style of you do a taunt, but you can also move around in case somebody gets up. To me, I feel like that's kind of a cool little factoid if that's an actual feature that's in the game. Then again, this game still in development, who knows if that'll change. I hope it won't, but to me that's cool. Another thing that I don't like is that we kind of see a very similar victory animation with every single character, which I hope that's not the case in the final product. I hope that is eventually resolved. Next up, we get to take a look at Adam Cole versus Paul White. I have to honestly say, Paul White looks good in this game. I'm not going to say the same thing for how we saw, Adam Cole, because we kind of already seen him in, the previous gameplay footage. So, yeah, that's cool. I do like how they go for the more, not too simulation or not too arcade style when it comes to, picking people up, when it comes to different weight classes. Adam Cole, a more, smaller wrestler in terms of comparing the two superstars and in terms of size. I do like how when Adam Cole tries to go for a slam or a pickup move, it's not very easy for him to actually do, and I guess you have to work your way into actually being able to pick him up, kind of being able to wear him down. I feel like that's kind of a good thing. It helps with it basically is, in a way, in my opinion, I see it as you need to wear down bigger sized opponents if you just so happen to be a character at a smaller stature. So I think that's a plus. Here's one thing that I will say that I absolutely like already, is that I think we have something that was similar to the, GameCube style of wrestling games. The momentum shift, I believe, returns in a way, or in a sense, which to me, I think is kind of a good thing. Momentum shift was a very unique concept. I didn't actually play, the GameCube era wrestling games, but I did hear a lot of good things about them. So, seeing that in this game, I feel like that's, actually pretty cool. So, yeah, that's another positive that I can see out of this game already. Last but not least, we have Hikaru Shida versus Thunder Rosa. This is probably going to be, a very interesting match. Once again, very short entrances. I do like the fact that that Shida actually comes out with her kendo stick. I think that's cool. The same thing with, Thunder Rosa. I didn't mention this already. Even though the entrances are very short and like the nameplate is like right there, I do like that they have little factoids about like, the person that you're playing as, which is actually pretty cool. Especially like with Thunder Rosa, like with, saying things like, with Kenny Omega saying like, best bout machine, that kind of thing. Same thing with, Thunder Rosa being like, the woman that ended, Dr. Brick Breaker's like, streak or whatever. I feel like, factoids like that is actually pretty cool. And, glad to see that, a wrestling game is, trying to do, a lot of things that are different and something that you wouldn't see in like, the normal, WWE games. Like the only time you ever see stuff like that is like, with just the commentary, and that's about it. Which, I think that's cool. I think it's cool that it's in this game. One cool little tidbit that I just seen was, Thunder Rosa going for like a diving attack, and as soon as she hits Shida, Shida hits the barricade and the barricade shakes. I think that's kind of like, a cool little, thing to actually point out. So that's, something. Now here's one cool thing that I will, point out in like this little sequence right here. Shida going for the Falcon Arrow and trying to go for a finish, but I don't think that like that was meant to happen, like her missing. So they try to correct that and then like, fix it. Once again, this is all like, CPU versus CPU. I don't think, they're gonna get it perfect like every single time. And once again, game's still in development. Who knows? Maybe this will get fixed at some point. Let's just hope. I will say though, I do like the, knocked against the ropes animation, which that's something, that you don't really see in like, the 2K games, where instead of it just being like, one arm against the ropes, like, I'm all groggy and shit. It's more like, they have like both their arms against the ropes. Like, small little details like that make the game, seem really interesting in my opinion. But that's just me. I think that, the ability to, play possum, I feel like that's cool. And another thing, the 2.99 kind of reminds me of like, like when you go for the pin and like No Mercy and you kick out like just at the very last second, instead of it being like, 1, 2, 2, that's it, it would be like, count 2 or like count 2 or 2.99. With this, I think that's, awesome, and I feel like, that's a great addition. So yeah, that was basically all of the gameplay that, we've seen so far, and to me, this is, in terms of gameplay, we already see, some of the things, forming together, some of the things, needing to be polished, which is cool. So now I kind of want to talk about some of the things that, are actually part of the game. And then after this, we'll, talk about, the pros and cons about the game already. So according to the description of like, multiple, outlets about the game itself, some of the features include, the different types of match types. Of course, there is singles matches, tag team matches, triple threats, aka three-way matches, four-way matches, ladder matches. The Casino Battle Royale has been confirmed, Falls Count Anywhere matches, unsynced Lights Out matches, and the exploding barbed wire death match, which, by the way, the fact that this is the first wrestling game to actually have that in like a 3D style environment, awesome. Like, I don't think we've actually seen like what exploding barbed wire deathmatch in like a 3D specific wrestling game. Like I know Fire Pro Wrestling has those kinds of matches, or has that kind of match in the game, but that's not included in any kind of WWE game or like any other type of game that like I've seen. that was like in 3D. There's also the inclusion of creator wrestler customization, being able to edit entrances, arenas, teams, so many other things. Kind of a standard thing for, you know, wrestling games, which, you know, I'm not necessarily against, and, you know, it's fine and dandy, but like, you know, it's kind of a standard thing. So that's something we have to see in order to see or to tell like whether or not it's good. So let's move on and continue with that. The inclusion of like top talent from the roster, of course, online co-op and multiplayer. Well, they just said online co-op, multiplayer together, as if it's like, you know, one thing, as if they're like, there's a difference between like actual multiplayer and like, you know, co-op, which I think is kind of it's a weird way they described it. And moving on, a deep career mode, which, you know, career modes, especially if they're done right, if they're done well, a good career mode is actually really important for like, you know, wrestling games, because it kind of gives, you know, something in terms of like, you know, why should I play this game? Like, you know, if there's a story mode, or if there's a story to the career mode, then that's perfect. Like it has to be like, you know, a good story. Like we have to feel like, you know, some sort of emotions, something that, you know, or even if it's just like, you know, some like, you know, goofy stuff here on the side and then here and there, blah blah blah. It's good. It's a good start for, you know, what we can see in terms of like, you know, the career mode. Apparently the game has more than over 40 weapons in the game, which to me is, you know, that's good. That's good, especially for a wrestling game. Wrestling games, they need weapons. You know, weapons are like, you know, one of the big things about like, you know, wrestling games, because, you know, not a lot of people like just doing like regular, you know, singles matches and all that kind of stuff. So like, you know, they sometimes want to do some of the extra stuff, like, you know, the hardcore matches, the no DQ matches, you know, the fatal 4-ways, you know, falls count anywhere, all that kind of stuff. They want to be able to do those matches. So like to see that, you know, being in a wrestling game, you know, a modern wrestling game, that's cool. What's weird is that there's no like mention of a cage match, which that's kind of, you know, sort of a negative. I don't know if that's going to be in the game, like in the final release. I don't know if they're going to probably add that in later on, but, you know, that's kind of upsetting. And then last but not least, the inclusion of mini games.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Okay, look, I'm not against the idea of mini games being in a wrestling game, but like, you know, a lot of people just play wrestling games for, you know, the wrestling itself. Like if people, you know, see the mini games in AEW Fight Forever and think, you know what, maybe I'll try this, you know, here and there. Like it shouldn't be like, you know, if it's its own mode, then like, sure, that's fine, I guess. But like, you know, it can't be worse than my faction. Like, let's just be real. Like it can't be worse than that. But yeah, that's basically everything in terms of like, you know, features that, you know, we know currently at the moment. So, you know, that's something that we gotta look out for. So with that being said, let's take a look at some of the, you know, pros and cons about, you know, Fight Forever that we know at the moment. Let's start with the pros. Pros about Fight Forever currently: game already is going for that no mercy vibe, which I absolutely love. Wrestlers do have a total of 5 finishers and signatures, which, you know, that's a good thing. It breaks from the norm of like, you know, what we're used to with like the WWE games, having like, you know, just 2, you know, finishers, 2 signatures, and that's about it. The gameplay looks, you know, smooth. Not 100% smooth, but, you know, smooth enough to where you can feel exactly, you know, how the game is going to turn out, like, when it's released. Momentum shift, that's returning from Day of Reckoning. I feel like that's, you know, somewhat of a cool thing. 2 buttons to reverse, you know, strikes and grapples. So it kind of gives, like, that's a cool thing in my opinion, because it gives, like, you know, somewhat of a challenge for, you know, people, so that way you're not pressing the same button for everything. Wins and losses do, you know, count for, like, you know, in-game records. I think that's cool. Intergender matches. This is something that, you know, was in the previous WWE games, but was taken out for a long period of time because, you know, WWE started going PG. You can't have, you know, male superstars beating up women. You can't have women beating up male superstars, you know, that sort of a thing. And then finally, we have, you know, the confirmation of potential, you know, roster updates post-launch. I think Tony Khan, like in an interview, said something about this, and because a lot of people were like kind of worried that, you know, certain superstars weren't going to make the cut, because apparently, guys like FTR, Evil Uno, who was at the presentation, you know, Evil Uno was literally at the presentation, which to me, him not being included in the game is insane. The Acclaim also not being in the game, that's even crazier because right now they're tag team champions. To have them not be currently in like the brand new video game that's supposed to be coming out whenever it's supposed to be coming out, to me that's kind of insane. Like, and not in a good way. Next up, let's talk about some of the cons in the game already. Strikes will sometimes whiff. I've seen them. You'd see them sometimes, like, during the gameplay. Springboard animations kind of have that, magnetic feel where, like, you're about to do the move. It almost connects, but it looks like it's gonna miss, but like it's still somewhat like connects. It is what it is. Like, I hope that does get fixed. Fixed at some point. That let's just hope. Certain roster members not being in the game, which I already talked about that with the post launch roster updates that are possibly happening. Another thing that's going to be crazy is no community creations at launch, which apparently is a possibility. I'm not really sure, because it was confirmed at the presentation that community creations wasn't going to be included in the game, but according to an article with Fightful, now they kind of want it into the game. So I don't know how that's going to turn out or when that'll actually happen. So if it's not there at launch, it is what it is, I guess. And then finally, the thing about like steel cage matches not possibly being in the game, I feel like that's kind of weird, like a wrestling game without a cage match. It just feels weird. Like I feel like a wrestling game should have some sort of a steel cage match in some way, shape, or form. Like, it shouldn't just be like excluded because of whatever reason. If there is a reason behind it, I guess it is what it is. Maybe in like a future update we'll see a steel cage in the game, but who knows. Now let's take a look at some of the things that are somewhat in between. Not necessarily things that will be 100% will be something that everybody's gonna say like, oh, the game's just bad now because like it's missing this or it has this in the game. Like, it's those things where it's like either you'll like it or either you don't like it. It's literally a taste thing. Entrances being too short. I know that's one of the things that I feel like a lot of people complained about, because we're so used to like wrestling games having like longer extended entrances and full entrance animations that like seeing like a wrestling game in like 2022 or potentially releasing in 2023 having like no entrances, kind of a bummer in a lot of people's opinions. Mini games, I feel like we talked about mini games already, so I'm not gonna go back to it. Like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not against it, but like again, I'm not necessarily 100% for it. It is what it is. I'll either like them or I won't. It's whatever. Mashing buttons to kick out or be submitted. To me, this is kind of a thing that like is once again one of those like old school things that like I feel like now with the modern wrestling games have been improved upon. Like, we know when it comes to like kicking out of like moves and things like that, I feel like kicking out and breaking out of submissions have been improved, like like new systems that are put in place nowadays. But seeing like the button mashing thing return, kind of like a no-no. But I feel like it wouldn't be the end of the world just have it back. Like, I know that certain people like have disabilities, and sometimes they can't really do the whole button mashing thing, and they play like with special controllers and whatnot. I don't think it would be like right for this game to like only have that as like a way to kick out or break out of submissions. Hopefully there's something an alternative that's like in the menus that we can change at some point. But yeah, that's one thing. No overalls for superstars. This is something that I feel like isn't necessarily a thing that's officially confirmed for the game, but this is only something that we have like a lot of people have speculated based on what they've seen in the gameplay demos, and that's about it. If that's the case, I feel like it's not only trying to go for like a fighting game kind of routine where like you don't have to rely specifically on like stats in order to determine whether a character plays good or if they're not, but rather just like if you like this character, you can play as this character, still be able to have a decent match and not feel like you're gonna be at a disadvantage. It's one of those mixed things. Like, it's kind of a mixed bag. I hope that like they do clarify on something like this, but I don't know if they will. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about some of the things that I do want to see Ukes or THQ Nordic talk about in the future, or even show off like at some eventual point. So let's begin with a couple of things. Roster reveal. I feel like every wrestling game needs to have some sort of roster reveal, so that way we know who's in the game and who isn't, and who we can expect to see like in future updates, and who we could expect to, like, you know, not even appear in the game day one. Like, you know, you need a good roster in order for a lot of people to actually, you know, sign up and say, you know what, I might actually put my money into this game. I might actually buy it day one. I already made my pre-order purchase. I'm not even going to deny that. That's, you know, something that I'm already going to confirm right now. And when that happens, like, you know, I'll even, you know, stream the game probably on here, maybe, who knows, I'm not sure. Let's talk about online play for a second, because this is something that I want to know and I'm absolutely curious about. Will we see any sort of cross-play for online? Cross-play is one of those things that's, like, you know, kind of needed when it comes to, like, you know, modern video games. Like, you see so many video games nowadays have, like, crossplay in some way, shape, or form. Overwatch now has crossplay. Apex Legends has crossplay. Fortnite has crossplay. Call of Duty has crossplay. I think Street Fighter 6 is about to have crossplay, but I'm not really sure about that. But, you know, it would make such an impact if the first wrestling game that they come out with has crossplay multiplayer in it. I'm just saying, like, it would be like an amazing thing. So many people would be talking about it, so many people would be, you know, playing it consistently, and, you know, it's just one of those things that, like, I kind of want to know if, like, that's going to be a thing. And I don't know if there's any confirmation about that, or if, like, I think it was talked about, like, I think by Kenny in, like, an interview. Like, I think the question about it came up, but yeah, that's one thing I definitely want to see. Will we be able to make championship matches? This is something that's always been, like, a common thing in the WWE games. Like, we were able to actually, you know, have and, you know, play title matches in game. We were able to set champions. We were able to do, like, all this kind of stuff. I'm curious if we're even going to see something like that actually be featured in the game. If it isn't, then, you know, that's kind of sad. But if it is, absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. How extensive is the creation suite? We already have a confirmation that we'll be able to, you know, make our own superstar, and apparently we'll be able to edit, you know, certain arenas and stuff like that. I want to know how far and how extensive, like, you know, the creation suite is going to be, because, you know, creations are definitely one of those things that, you know, is kind of a big deal when it comes to, you know, wrestling games. And even though, you know, we already have somewhat of a confirmation that there's a possibility we won't be getting, you know, community creations at launch, but I do still hope that we'll get, you know, something in regards to, like, how creations are going to be, how it's going to look, and, you know, how we're going to be able to, you know, make ourselves and make other people or make other things in this game. And that, like, that's the one thing that's, you know, just constantly on my mind. And last but not least, since the game is already conformed for the platform, what the fuck does the Switch version look like, and how does it run? Okay, I know that's kind of a meme one, but, like, I'm genuinely serious. This is the first wrestling game that we've seen, like, that's actually, you know, not too arcadey, like 2K Battlegrounds, but, like, still in that somewhat simulation realm, like how WWE 2K games are. And the last game that, like, actually was somewhat of a simulation wrestling game that was on the Nintendo Switch was WWE 2K18, and that game ran like garbage. And there is a reason to why it actually runs like garbage, but I'm not going to get into that, and I'm not going to talk about that in this video, but, like, I probably would if people want to see that. So we'll talk about that another time, but, like, yeah, I just want to see how, you know, the Switch version is going to look, how it's going to play, and, you know, if it's actually worth the investment. I'm actually pre-ordering the Nintendo Switch version and planning on streaming it here on YouTube, so that's going to be something that, like, I'm still, you know, curious about. So yeah, just show us Switch gameplay. Like, that's all I want to see. I just want to see how the game looks on the Nintendo Switch. That's all I can ask for. That's all I'm gonna ask for in terms of, like, you know, showing off more of the game. But yeah. With that being said, that's gonna wrap up today's video. What are your guys' thoughts on AEW Fight Forever? Do you think it's gonna be good? Do you think it's gonna be bad? I want to know what your thoughts are, and give your honest opinions. I don't care how negative they are. I don't care how positive they are. With that being said, my name is Dende, and yeah, that's basically it. You guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe, wash your hands, all that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever the hell that is. Peace.